Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're diving into a topic that's both complex and crucial, the future of warfare.
Sounds intriguing.
You guys sent us a fascinating mix of sources.
hmm
We've got excerpts from a research paper aptly titled The Future of Warfare.
hmm
Pretty straightforward, right?
To the point, yeah.
We've also got some AI chatbot summaries from Perplexity, Quinn, and Google Deep Research even chimed in.
Oh, wow. Google Deep Research. That's pretty cool.
It is. And to round it out,
Oh,
some
yeah.
predictions from leading think tanks. Lots to unpack here.
Huh.
But don't worry, that's what we're here for.
Absolutely got to make sense of it all.
Exactly. So where do we even begin with this? I mean, the future of warfare sounds almost like a movie title.
It does, doesn't it? But when you look at these sources, what's striking is the speed of change.
Oh, yeah.
Warfare's changing faster than ever before, and the common thread through all of this is technology.
Makes sense. Technology is always evolving, but how is it reshaping warfare so drastically? Give me an example.
Well, let's look at AI. AI isn't just assisting with military operations anymore.
Yeah, I saw that in the Future of Warfare paper. It was talking about AI taking over some core military functions.
Right. We're not talking about just helping with logistics or something. We're talking decision making.
Seriously?
Yeah, target identification, potentially even autonomous weapons systems.
Autonomous weapons systems, like they can make decisions on their own.
That's what we're looking at. And the Pentagon, for example, they've got this program called Replicator.
I think I heard about that. It's about deploying lots of AI-controlled systems, right?
Exactly. Masses of drones and other systems, all controlled by AI.
That's kind of terrifying, honestly. Imagine AI making decisions in the heat of battle, like maybe even faster than a human could react. What does that mean for us?
That's the million-dollar question. Some experts are saying AI could actually improve accuracy, reduce collateral damage.
I see what they're saying.
But then others are warning about the dangers, like handing over life or death decisions to algorithms. Algorithms that might not understand the nuances of a battlefield or just, the complexity of war in general.
Right, because war isn't a video game, right?
Yeah.
There's so many factors involved.
Exactly. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high here. It's not just about efficiency, it's about the very nature of warfare itself
Wow.
and how it's changing.
So basically what we're seeing here is a fundamental shift in how wars will be fought. AI is at the forefront of this change.
Absolutely.
But it's not just about AI, right? The Future of Warfare paper also mentioned robotics as a major player.
You got it. And this goes way beyond just drones, which we all know are already a big part of modern warfare.
Right.
Now we're talking ground vehicles, underwater systems, even exoskeletons for soldiers,
Hmm.
all becoming increasingly autonomous, more and more sophisticated every day.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie. Robots fighting our wars. Think about it. Robots diffusing bombs, doing those really dangerous jobs that put soldiers at risk.
Yeah. It's incredible technology, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
But it also makes you think, if we have robots fighting our wars, does that make war less costly? I mean, less human cost, obviously. But could it make war more likely to happen, something that people turn to more quickly?
That's a really thought-provoking question. It makes you wonder, are we heading into uncharted territory here?
I think so, and I think the sources we've got all point to that as well,
Yeah. It's clear that this is new territory,
Yeah.
and we're all trying to figure out what it means for the future.
And not just the future of warfare, the future in general.
For sure.
It really is mind-boggling when you think about it, right? Like, not only is how we fight changing, but these sources are saying where we fight is going to be totally different too.
Yeah, exactly. It's not just about those traditional battlefields anymore. Like we've always thought of, land, sea, air.
Right.
Now we're looking at a whole new set of domains and the implications, I mean, they're huge. Let's take space, for example. Yeah. Space is becoming, well, it's a potential battleground. It's not just about satellites anymore.
Wow. Seriously?
Mhm.
Like weapon systems in space? Is that what we're talking about?
That's a possibility. And even just the risk of conflict in orbit, satellites getting taken out, that kind of thing.
Okay, so imagine like a war in space.
Mm-hmm.
How do you even defend against that? I mean, space is, well, it's space. It's massive.
Yeah.
And there's nowhere to hide.
That's exactly what military strategists are trying to figure out right now. I mean, it's not just about protecting your own stuff up there.
Right.
It's also about preventing conflicts that could have crazy consequences for everyone, right? I mean, down here on Earth.
Yeah, that makes sense. So space is one thing, but what about underwater? The sources, I think it was Google Deep Research, they talked about undersea cables
Oh, yeah.
and how vulnerable they are.
Right. Those cables carry, a crazy amount of internet traffic, right? For the whole world.
Yeah, I mean, think about everything we do online. It's
Yeah.
all going through those cables.
Exactly. So imagine, what if those cables were sabotaged?
Oh, man. Economies could be tripled. Communications would be disrupted. You're talking about chaos on a global scale.
And how do you even defend against that? Like thousands of miles of cable under the ocean.
That's the problem. It's
Right.
insanely difficult, practically impossible to protect all of that. I mean, think about it.
Yeah, one of the sources, I can't remember which one, said that messing with those cables, it could be just as effective as a traditional military strike, or even more so.
Yeah, and it might even be harder to, like, figure out who did it, you know?
Oh, for sure. It's all very cloak and dagger down there.
Right, and that makes it even more dangerous. It's like a new kind of warfare.
Absolutely. Then you add in cyberspace, which is, I mean, that's a battlefield we're already dealing with, right?
We are, and it's only getting more intense.
Yeah, cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns. I mean, all that stuff is just getting more sophisticated all the time.
And with AI, I mean, AI-powered hacking attempts, it's becoming almost impossible to defend against. It's scary. You realize, like, how reliant we are on the internet for, well, for everything these days. Banking, communication, even the power grid.
Right, everything. And a cyber attack, if it was coordinated well enough, I mean, it could bring a country to a standstill.
No doubt.
Uh.
So it's not just about protecting military systems. It's about protecting all of that other stuff, too.
Mhm.
Our everyday lives, basically.
That's why cybersecurity has gone from a technical issue to, like, a national security issue. I mean, it's essential.
Well, it's all connected, right? Like what's happening in the physical world and what's happening in the digital world, they're not separate anymore.
Yeah, those lines are definitely blurred, and the sources are pretty clear about that. Like, any future conflict, it's not going to be one or the other.
Right, it'll be both.
Hmm.
So we've got AI, we've got robots, we've got space, the deep sea, and cyberspace. And to top it all off, there's this whole thing called hybrid warfare that the sources keep talking about.
Yeah, that one's kind of a head scratcher.
Yeah, it sounds complicated.
It is. It's basically like, imagine blending conventional military force with, well, with tactics that are designed to kind of fly under the radar.
Under the radar.
Yeah, tactics that stay below the threshold that would normally trigger like a full-blown war response, you know?
Okay, so it's like you're trying to achieve your goals, but you're doing it in a way that doesn't set off all the alarms.
Exactly. You're exploiting vulnerabilities, sowing chaos, all that, but without actually starting a war, at least not officially.
I mean, can you give me like a real world example of what that might look like?
Sure. One source, it might have been the Future of Warfare paper, pointed to Russia. They talked about how Russia has allegedly been using social media.
Really? Social media?
Yeah, they've allegedly used it to, like, recruit saboteurs, disrupt elections in other countries, even attack critical infrastructure,
Yeah.
stuff like power grids and things.
And it's all done online.
Yeah, a lot of it. And the thing is, it's really hard to prove who did it.
Oh, I bet. So it's like you can do all this damage without anyone being able to say for sure, like, it was them. They did it.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so hard to respond to.
Man, it's like the rules of war are being completely rewritten. And not
Uh-huh.
just with like cyber stuff, but with psychological warfare, disinformation campaigns. It's like anything goes.
And the sources even mention the potential for bioweapons, you know? That's a whole other level of scary.
Yeah, it is. So with everything changing so fast, how do we even like begin to prepare for this? It feels like we're stepping into the unknown here.
We are, to a certain extent, but I think the first step is understanding the threat, right? Like, recognizing that future conflicts, they're going to be different.
Yeah.
We're not going to have those clear-cut declarations of war, those traditional battle lines. It's going to be much more fluid, much more ambiguous.
Because we've got to be adaptable. We've got to be able to think on our feet.
Exactly. And that brings us to another really interesting point that came up in the sources, this idea of the democratization of war.
Democratization of war. What does that even mean?
It's about how technology, especially in the military, is becoming cheaper, more accessible. And that means it's not just nation states that have access to it anymore.
Oh, wow. So like smaller countries could have more powerful weapons.
Yeah, and not just countries. We're talking terrorist organizations, even individuals, potentially.
That is not a comforting thought.
It's not. Think about drone swarms, for example. They can deliver, like, a serious amount of firepower.
Yeah, I've seen videos of those. It's crazy how many drones can be controlled at once.
And they're a fraction of the cost of, like, a traditional fighter jet or something.
So does this mean like the old rules don't apply anymore? I mean, if everyone has access to these powerful weapons, What does that do to the balance of power in the world?
That's the question, isn't it? It definitely shakes things up. It makes conflict more likely, maybe even less predictable.
We've covered so much ground here. It's clear that the future of warfare is going to be radically different from anything we've ever seen before.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, AI taking over decision making, robots on every front, battles in space and cyberspace, and even the possibility of everyday people getting their hands on advanced weapons.
And we can't forget about hybrid warfare. You know,
Yeah.
all that stuff happening in the shadows. It's a lot to process, really. But before we wrap things up, there's one more thing we have to talk about, the ethical side of all this.
Right, the ethics. Can't forget about that.
Because as warfare becomes more and more reliant on technology, especially on AI and all these autonomous systems, the ethical questions, I mean, they just get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, for sure. Like, take that example with the AI-controlled drone, right? What if it makes a mistake, a bad decision, and civilians are killed? Who's responsible for that?
Yeah, is it the programmer,
Mm-hmm.
the military commander? I mean, what about the politician who authorized the use of the drone in the first place? It's a really complicated question.
It is, and it's a question we need to be thinking about now
Yeah.
because this technology, it's already here and it's
Yeah.
not going away.
And it's not just about like who to blame when something goes wrong, right?
Right.
It's about the bigger picture. Like, can we really hand over life or death decisions to machines?
Right, like are we comfortable with that? And what happens when those decisions are being made by machines without any human involvement at all?
I mean, these are tough questions, but they're questions we can't afford to ignore.
Absolutely not. We've got to be having these conversations now.
Wow, we've really gone deep on this one, haven't we?
We have. It's a lot to take in, for sure.
I mean, AI running the show, robots everywhere you look, battles in space and underwater and online, and then hybrid warfare on top of that. It's like, how is anyone supposed to keep up with all this?
It is a lot, but that's why we're doing this deep dive, right?
Exactly. We got to break it down, make sense of it all. But I think, at this point, it's important to step back and think about, well, think about you, the listener. Why should you care about all this? The future of warfare. I mean, it sounds so, I don't know, removed from everyday life.
But that's the thing, it's not removed at all. This isn't some like far off sci-fi scenario. It's happening now and it's going to affect everyone.
I mean, yeah, when you think about it, all this stuff, it's already part of our lives in a lot of ways,
Hmm.
like AI.
Exactly.
It's not just in military systems, it's in our cars, our phones, even, like when you go to the doctor, AI is playing a role.
And robotics too. Like manufacturing, healthcare, all sorts of industries are using robots now, and they're getting better all the time.
So whether we realize it or not, the future of warfare is already shaping the world around us.
Absolutely. And it goes way beyond the battlefield,
Uh,
the economy, politics, even our relationships with other countries. All of that is going to be affected by how warfare evolves.
so it's not just about like understanding what kinds of weapons will be used in the future. It's about understanding how those weapons and all this new technology, how that's going to change the world as a whole.
Right. And that's why it's so important to be informed, to understand what's happening so we can, have a say in how things unfold.
Because we're not just passive observers here, right? We're all part of this. And the decisions we make today, they're shaping the future.
And those decisions, they're getting more and more complex, more and more ethically challenging. Like, we talked about the potential of AI, right? But we also talked about the risks and the questions of accountability. And the same goes for autonomous weapons, for robots making life or death decisions. These are huge dilemmas.
I mean, think about it. If we're going to have AI playing such a big role in war, who decides what the rules are? Like, how does an AI even know what's right and wrong?
Exactly. And who teaches it those rules? Who decides what moral code to program into these machines? And what happens when those codes, clash with human judgment or even clash with each other?
It's almost like we're creating this whole new world, this digital battlefield, but we haven't really thought through all the implications yet.
We haven't, and we need to, and fast. Because of the future of warfare, it's being coded right now.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility to make sure that code reflects our values, our humanity.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can't just let technology run wild. We have to be intentional about how we use it, especially when it comes to something as serious as war.
Right. We want to use it to make the world a safer place, not a more dangerous one. And that takes careful thought, it takes dialogue, and it takes action.
Well said. I hope this deep dive has given everyone something to think about, and hopefully it's just the start of a much bigger conversation about the future of warfare and really the future of humanity.
Me too. Because this is just the beginning. The landscape is constantly changing, and we have to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for a future where peace is the priority.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay engaged.